People who saved themselves for marriage and eventually got divorced. What was your approach towards sex after the divorce? This was my wife. We've been divorced for 3 years and I'm pretty sure she hasn't had sex since, and won't until she gets married again. So she's apparently been true to her principles. One of my lifelong friends comes from an extremely Christian family. All 3 kids were taught how bad sex before marriage is. 2 of the 3 ended up with children out of wedlock. My close friend of these siblings saved herself but ended up rushing into marriage with very little self-awareness and found herself in a completely sexually, and otherwise, incompatible marriage. All 3 are divorced at least once now. One has more baby mamas than I can keep track of. After my friend's divorce, she abandoned the no sex before marriage business. She didn't have any wild escapades but developed strong sexual, and otherwise, chemistry with her now husband. Her parents still tried to shame them. It was a clusterfuck to watch over the years. This doesn't apply to me, but I do have a friend who is in this boat. His approach has been to swear off relationships and be celibate for the rest of his life. Well, that's one way to handle it, I guess. Sounds like he will be the only one handling it. Mom didn't have sex for 8 years after getting divorced. She's a devoted Christian for sure. Unfortunately, she got drunk and ruined her 8-year streak. Got it on with my boyfriend's dad. Sigh. Are you going to be dating your stepbra here soon? Write this down. Pornhub people. I'm fairly certain they have this one covered already. I knew a girl that was very hands-off prior to marriage. I never really thought too much about it until I went to her wedding, and before they kissed, the pastor made the announcement that this will be their first kiss, and I was blown away that they have never kissed before, but after their "you may now kiss the bride" kiss, it was obviously their first kiss. The rest of the wedding and reception went well enough, and I heard nothing from them for a few months until someone told me they are getting a divorce, less than 6 months later. I have a few theories on why. I think the bride is asexual and either never realized it or did not reveal that prior to getting married. She got a bunch of tattoos after the divorce, full chest ink sleeves. But I never heard of her dating after, but we're not close. One of my best friends is getting married next year to a girl he's been with for something like 10 years. He said he can count on one hand how many times they've had sex in that time frame. I don't know if they're both asexual and just want life partners or what the deal is, but it caught me off guard for sure. Holy shit, that's next level. I'm either happy they found each other or super sad for one of them. Did he seem upset when he said this? I don't know. He didn't seem to like the situation, but I mean, it's been 10 years and has still with her. Maybe their sex life has picked up since we had that talk, but I doubt it. Maybe neither of them think they can do better? Maybe they both struggle with their sexual orientation. Who knows what's going on, but I've never heard of 2 youngish people together that long and not going at it like rabbits, at least in the first few years. Hopefully they're happy and not just keeping up with appearances. One or both of them might also take meds that lower libido as a side effect. I find sex uncomfortable, mentally, if I can't get in the mood, so some meds really suck. I am on an opioid medication that does this. It kind of sucks because I know sometimes my partner thinks I don't find her attractive, when I really do. In our conservative Lebanese society, after the first divorce, you get a free pass actually. Some people would talk about you, but a lot of conservative people would just tell them she's divorced, she can do what she wants. From what I've been told, my GF, Greek culture is very similar. You get a black mark which can be seen as bad, or completely liberating. Greek here, that's totally true. I'm in my mid-30s divorced. Greeks usually don't get divorced, so I'm the black sheep. The old ladies at church ask if I'm dating, going out, etc. I feel like they're trying to live through me vicariously. And now half of Reddit is doing it too. I have made a mistake. Good question. I'm an ex-Mormon and was a virgin when I got married at 21. Was married for over 6 years, had a good, active sex life, and when I got divorced 2 years back, it was a strange new world. I was excited to have sex with new people, but I quickly found after a handful of hookups that it wasn't always that great. There were some exceptions obviously, but I often find that people who haven't been in long-term relationships are pretty lousy in bed. Having a bunch of one-night stands doesn't make you better at ducking emo, getting to know someone's body and experimenting does. If I could do it over again, I wouldn't have saved myself for marriage. The best sex I've had has been after my divorce. I have a general rule now that I won't have sex on the first date, I like having more of an emotional connection with the other person. It's more enjoyable that way for me. Having a bunch of one-night stands doesn't make you better at ducking emo, getting to know someone's body and experimenting does. This so much. I dated a guy for a short time who was selfish, pushy and crap in bed. He would constantly bring up stories that gave him an excuse to talk about girls he'd ducked. He'd be telling me this awesome story about some crazy traveling experience, then just end it by yeah, sorry but I had sex with her. Like, the story still made sense without telling me that. He told me he'd stopped counting at 51 night stands. He was absolutely terrible at sex. And the worst thing was, he wouldn't listen. You get better at sex by communicating and listening to what your partner wants. He did pretty much the opposite. You dated and he was feeling he should tell you stories about him ducking someone else. That's a big yikes from me. Whenever I'm dating someone I use all my brainpower to avoid accidentally saying anything about my previous partners. I just don't want to make it uncomfortable. Yeah, same. I mean, I wouldn't lie if asked, but I don't bring up sexcapades. I wasn't jealous or anything, it was just quite unattractive. Got married in my mid-20s, not realizing that asexuality was even a thing, let alone that I could possibly apply to a good Christian boy who had saved himself. Purity culture in some Christian circles can be a really rough time. We were married for about a year and a half, and I only ever came once from sex or sexual interaction with her. It was really rough for both of us, the hits to her self-esteem, the belief that I was broken in some way. Over time we just stopped really trying. A whole lot of other factors played into the split, but that was definitely one of them. I spent a couple of years after avoiding all possible romantic entanglements, then ventured out a little and found some open-minded people who I briefly dated here or there. It was nice to be close to someone again, and I have found that I really like making other people have a good time. There is something immensely satisfying to me to be the cause of someone else's satisfaction, but it can be a little hard for a partner since I am so devoid of sexual reaction. It takes a fair bit of reassurance and good communication to keep that stuff good and healthy, and so they don't feel like they are using me or that I find them repulsive or whatever. Still a work in progress, I guess. Edit. Well folks, it's official, my highest rated comment and first one getting awards is about how I realized I don't like coming by getting a divorce. Didn't think it'd figure out I was ace from reading a comment on this post, but here we are, Lamau. Glad to my experience is useful in some way. I guess my only advice is not to jump to any conclusions too fast unless you are really sure. It took me some time to really settle into my own sexual identity, and I do have one of those, despite not wanting sex things done to me. But I know for some people a label or word just clicks perfectly, feels like putting on the most comfortable clothes ever, and that's them for life. Be aware that sexual identity can change, and that it's okay for it to do so. I had to learn not to blame myself or feel like I had screwed up, but rather was learning about myself, finding my most comfortable fit for this stage in my life. Anyway, enjoy discovering yourself. Your experience is valid, valuable and important. I have a question and I hope it's not worded rudely. But if you have a partner, and they find out that you're ace, how do you feel if that's like a deal breaker for them? I'm not sure I'm asking this right, but if they react negatively to you being devoid of sexual reaction to the point that they can't see having a relationship with you, how do you react? Did you feel guilty or try to change? Do you accept that it just can't work out? These days I try to be upfront and transparent about this stuff if it's at all looking like things are going in that direction. I'd rather they know beforehand, and it seems kind of predatory or at least dishonest to me to do anything otherwise. It'd take a long time and a deep connection for me to consider getting close enough to people for it to be an issue. That said, while I was still uncertain about it all, it caused a lot of pain and heartbreak with my ex-wife. She thought there was something wrong with her, I thought there was something wrong with me. I was a shit show, obviously. Also, both being pretty heavily involved in church and Christian circles, we had absorbed the mythologized view of sex and marriage that can be so pervasive and damaging. Alas, we were not each other's perfect partners just because we had waited until we were married, not was sex a beautiful and wonderful thing the first time. Like many couple, we discovered that it was awkward and uncomfortable and pretty weird the first few times. Then it was fine. We made excuses that I just wasn't used to it yet, or I was tired or whatever else. And eventually we didn't need the excuses anymore because the whole process was just kinda upsetting because neither of us know what was going on or why it wasn't working. I only learned about asexuality after the separation and some time in a mental hospital.